There's a very irritating trend going on with board game reviews right now, and that trend is that publishers are sending prototypes of games for us to review, but then are asking for us to give them back or give them to another reviewer to take a look at. And I'm not being fair. The trend itself is not irritating. What's irritating is the fact that the games that I'm being given, especially lately, they're too fun for me to want to give them up. So I mean, if we're gonna get prototype games and we're gonna have to give them up, maybe stop making them so fun would be great. Because here I am, I have to give the review of Gladius, and I don't have it with me. So come on a journey with me and we'll take a look at some B-roll while I explain exactly what Gladius from Cat Quartet Games is and how it works. Gladius is a 2 to 5 player bidding game with a hefty dose of read your neighbor. Each player picks a character and gets the corresponding bidding tokens, character card, and character deck. There's a podium for first, second, and third place, with spots enough to score over the course of 3 rounds. Each round an event is flipped over and gladiators are placed on teams. The event dictates how many gladiators are on a team, and which of the 3 categories will be applicable for the round. Players then alternate taking turns doing one of 3 actions. Playing a card, either face down or face up. This often will affect the score of the categories for the gladiators. Sometimes cards will be moved to other teams, gladiators will be added, or a player gets a chance to view hidden information. The second option is that a player can perform their special action on their player card. They discard the appropriate number of cards from their hand indicated on that player card and perform the special action. Each of the characters has a unique ability, however discarding cards is a bit of a pain point because each user only draws 2 cards at the end of each round. The final action a player can take on their turn is placing a betting token. They place one of their betting tokens face down above one of the teams. Most of their tokens are wagering that that team will win, but 2 are a bet that the specific team will come in last place. Once a player places their second betting token for the round, they pass until everyone else has done so as well. All cards in play are flipped over and applicable scores are added. All tokens that bet on the winning team are placed on the corresponding circle on the first place podium. The same is done for third place. All tokens that were wagered for the second place team go back to their owners. This is repeated for 2 more rounds, then the first place tokens are scored and the third place tokens are scored in similar fashion, but anyone that bet a regular token on a team that lost adds 1 point to the player that correctly guessed the team would get last in a particular round. So my initial thoughts with this game is it's cool. Like this is a smooth game with easy to explain rules. Everything makes sense and nothing seems too terribly random. Like sure, the gladiator cards are going to be random, but you have a good handful of cards to start with. You can place those betting tokens wherever you'd like, but then there's also the wagering and figuring out what maybe your opponents played, because you don't know what type of bet they're placing. You do know that they are placing a bet. So if they're stacking a bunch of cards on one particular gladiator and then bet on them, are they putting bad cards there and just putting a last place token, or are they really buffing it up to try to make, get first place and get the most points? So while it's got that good chunk of read your neighbor, try to figure out what they're thinking, it also has a real familiar feel of something like Camel Up to me, where you're wagering on something, but you're not 100% sure what the outcome's going to be, which is a feature that would be pretty annoying in a longer game. However, Gladius takes like 15 to 30 minutes. Specifically, if I were to take something and categorize it into a con for the game, it's got a lot of cards in it and it's got a lot of tokens that you have to flip face down. Really a pretty minor gripe, but the fact of the matter is it is the biggest slowdown point for a very smooth game. Now if we're looking at pros, this game is svelte. It's the whole package. It looks nice, it plays really well, it's got a lot of really interesting tactics and mechanics for it, and it's just all around, it's enjoyable. Like it was something that I still want to play but can't currently. I will soon. We're gonna get to play this soon. It's coming to Kickstarter. Like I said, specifically the mechanics of that Camel Up wagering feeling. Like I enjoy betting games, and so that's why I enjoy this game. It's a game that's simple without being overly complicated. No, that's redundant. It's a game that's simple without being overly simplistic, if that makes any sense. Like you've got a lot of options available to you, but all of them make sense in the moment, in the decision that you have to make. And like pros and cons are, there's nothing specific that I'm going to call this out for as a con, because it is a good, I mean, the other game that won this award, what the Lukey, I don't know if it's Lukey or Lucy, People's Choice Award. I've reviewed one other game that's won that award, and it was Fantastic Factories, which is one of my top games from 2019. Which is a list that's coming out later. But there's a reason this game is so well liked, and that's because it does what it seeks to do really well. But that doesn't mean it's for everyone. So rather than diving deep into pros and cons for this, because really I've got very few cons, I want to go into what this game is and what it's not. This game is not super heavy. It's not one that takes a long time. It's not a game that's going to take up all of game night. It wants to make you make interesting decisions that aren't just boring. They aren't just, I pick one card and something happens or something doesn't happen, which works in certain games, but that's not what this game is about. This game is about jockeying for position and putting your bets on a specific team and boosting that team's morale or boosting that team's combat ability, or sabotaging someone else or sabotaging another team, or using the unique ability that you have to move things into your advantage. It is a smooth game experience. The strategy is not the high level where you necessarily can think strategy beginning of the game all the way to the end, because there's 3 distinct rounds and you don't know what's going to come up between those rounds. It's a game that you have to act on instinct in certain instances, and that's not for everyone all the time. For me, it hits the sweet spot of exactly what I'm looking for in a lighter weight game. It gives me interesting decisions, it looks nice on the table, and it's super smooth. But that's Gladius, a game that I thoroughly enjoyed and really wish that I still had a copy of. Highly recommend that you at least take a look at and see if this is something that you might be interested in, because it's certainly something that I would be interested in.